All right, so we're going to step back in time a little bit here because it's really important that we do understand the history of it. Okay, just before we do go to that, in your paperwork here, you've got some very good exploded diagrams. We've got some charts of LED sizing, okay, and you've also got on the opposite page, you've got the diagram which you saw on the PowerPoint presentation, but also you've got a chart of where we were to where we are today. Okay, so just moving on to that brief history, and I have kept it brief because the history of LED lights goes on and on and on and on and on. And I thank, in part Wikipedia for this, but even Wikipedia didn't have a lot of information on the history of LEDs. But in simple terms, it started in 1907. In 1907, it was just a thought, and it was based around carborundum and a carborundum crystal, and look at that, it sparks when you put power onto it with a battery and all of this kind of stuff. Then we went to 1927 when Oleg got hold of it and he took it to that next leg, that next step. In 1955, it was basically swallowed up then by a radio corporation for communications and things like that, and they were using it for infrared lighting. Then we moved on to 1961. So there was huge gaps before LEDs actually became what they are today. In 1962, it actually became a light. It became a light source. In 72, it was taken to that next level and actually become used into what we see here. Okay, 76 it grew, 79 it made its actual official debut, and then from that point on till 94, LED lights, they were too expensive, they were too costly to do. Cost was a huge factor. That's what prevented LEDs from coming in. And then all of a sudden in 94, we started to find a bit of an idea on how they could become more cost effective. It was discovered that they were cheaper to run. So anyway, without dwelling on the history and the history of cost, the information's there. There will be some questions in it, but it was at some point in the late 70s that they decided that they could produce these cheaper, mass produce them to get and achieve what they wanted, and it was indicator lights. They wanted to achieve a really small indicator light rather than having big bulbs on machinery that vibrated. They worked out that this would actually work because it was sealed, it had a resin top, it was stable, it would work as an indicator, and it wasn't until way after that that they actually, into the late 90s, early 2000s, that LED lights really started to push forward. So that was a really brief history on the LED. Now, there's two reasons why we went down that path, and that is to understand where we've come from. 1907, if you ever Google it and have a look at what they had in 1907, it was probably as big as the frying pan that you have at home, a large frying pan. That was the size of, and it emitted around 3 to 4 lumens of light. So to where we are today, and then taking that next step, where are we going to be in the future? People are taking LED, they're seeing the value, they're seeing the benefit, and they're taking it further and further. But out of the growth of LED came one important factor, and it was LED strip. Right, so what is LED strip lighting? You could spend hours playing with LED strip, and most of us have. We've put it on our cars, we've put it in our rooms, we've done everything when we were young. But now let's have a look at actually what LED strip is. Basically, it's a pack of surface mounted diodes attached to a small, flexible, to a point, printed circuit board. Okay, with an adhesive backing. Okay, now each of those SMDs, you can have white, warm white, you can have red, green, blue, but what we're looking at here today is just a white LED strip. Now, That printed circuit board is, as it says, it's a copper printed circuit board that is made flexible, which means it does have limitations. Okay, it has a self-adhesive back, but the limitations are I can't tie it into a knot and things like that. Okay, it was designed to be stuck down on and retained flat. So LED strip lighting is, in short, LEDs attached to a flexible printed circuit board to provide linear light in a long, narrow length of strip, which can be stuck down, used for whatever you want to use it for. Now, standard strip is IP20. You can get IP65, you can get IP67, and you can even get submersible, which is IP68 if you wish. But all of the chips used on LED strip are SMD.